All right. Hey, trust you are doing well. You had a great Christmas, holidays, and New Year's. Well, I love that eagle. It was a gift to myself, praise the Lord, from out in Tahoe years ago. Just reminds me and represents, look at the determination of the eagle, the superiority. It reminds me of the greatness of this country. And just, praise the Lord, love this country with the opportunity it's given me. I also used to be a pastor to internationals, 20 years back. And, there would be people from Korea, South Africa, South America, Mexico, just literally Germany, all over the world that came to this country because it was the greatest country of opportunity in the world. And so that's, where we are. I truly believe that, the country's definitely not perfect. It's got a lot of area and room for improvement. But when you compare it to other countries, it really is the best. That being said, I shared in my video last week a top lesson for 2023 about the populist politician and the impact that it has on investment, and how, in fact, that it's in certain areas it's changed the financial dynamics completely. Where it used to be, you and I as a buyer and seller make an agreement on the value of a property and transact. Now these populist politicians are trading in a currency of popularity, not economics, and are altering the values of investments based on the policies that they're implementing or the laws that they're completely disregarding. The other thing that I wanted to expound on, and we see this in the news this past week, is the moral elitist bureaucrat, or the bureaucrat who takes their position and implements their quote unquote moral standard. What I mean by that is, you saw in Maine where they just, Secretary of State, unelected position, removed Trump from the ballot. Even in interviews acknowledged, hey, I know that that's not protocol of process, but based on what I've seen of this insurrectionist person, it was the right thing to do. And again, I'm not here to comment about Trump, whether you like him, don't like him, promote one party or another. I'm talking about, moreover, what I see going on in the impact of investment. And I don't see any other investors really focusing on or talking about it, because it's kind of a secondary thing, but it is not really, and I'll explain. You have these moral elitist bureaucratic people, whether it's in the judicial piece that we've seen, and I shared a bit last week in that, but also in these leaderships of government. Part of it stems from, our own failures as a country over the last 30 years in the higher education realm. We let pass all the stuff going back to the 70s to present, that they don't teach, the implementation of laws. They don't teach the greatness of this country. These are all things that we've come to a place where people have a truth selectivity. My truth is what's true for me, and then I'm going to make it true for you. And so we've seen these bureaucrats, and I'll give you just two examples, really three, right? So in the panhandle of Florida, when we're doing a restoration on a hurricane project, they absolutely, unequivocally said, hey, we're going to implement this based on the code as we interpret it, and you are now required to no longer be able to apply hurricane stands there for ACs. You've got to move those units down because it's just a better basis. Now, again, this was not direct application of the code. It was the interpretation of the bureaucrats there. What that meant is it cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars more because of that implementation. And it also meant that the insurance company wasn't going to pay for it because it wasn't a requirement, quote unquote, of the code. It's a requirement of the bureaucratic leadership. Another example here in Florida, again, we'll cover outside of Florida as well too. We bought an office park, our corporate headquarters. A friend of mine runs a statewide roofing contractor, been that way for 30 plus years, big company, does stuff all across the state. He's done roof for us. That's how we became friends. He's done roof for us for, 15 years, both in single family residential, commercial, multifamily. And it took 6 months working with the municipality. Ultimately, areas that, he had been able to get things done without putting in stands, without disconnecting ACs, but following the code. He met with the head building official, and their ultimate decision was, well, we understand that it's not specific like that in the code, but it's up to our decision, and so we decide this, which is crazy, right? That's like saying, okay, this is our call to make, and so we're going to make it, even though the building code, which is established as the parameter to follow, doesn't stipulate it. We're going to stipulate it, right? And this stems from these bureaucrats seeing what they got in the way of power after the pandemic. The pandemic gave government leadership a greater degree of power than they'd ever had before. They could do unilaterally whatever they wanted, and there was no downside because it's the pandemic. Well, that's what we've seen in some areas just carry forward with the leadership, where they've taken this type of dictatorial position, and or, this is the moral high ground. We say that it's the right thing to do, so that's how we're going to do it. Another example of that is in Georgia, where we had a simple fire, 10-unit building, simple fire. Every 2 units, they have fire stop walls built in the original construction. That was the code. And the fire only affected 2 units. The code enforcement people came back and then also with the city attorney said, no, we want the entire building demolished. What? I mean, I can't even tell you how many countless fires we've dealt with over all the years. And, in the industry, that's not how you do it. It's like, okay, you've got a whole building. I mean, good Lord, another project, another location, another county altogether. We had I think it was a 12-unit building. Half of the units were affected by a fire. Again, same thing with a fire stop. It was like a 3-story building. And we didn't have to renovate the other portion of the building because it was fine. It was just that portion up to the fire stop that we renovated everything brand new. But so this particular municipality, they came back and said, no, we want you to demolish the entire building. And our attorney fought for 4 months. Like, this is insane. It doesn't have any measure of appreciable standard, even in insurance settlement claims, construction, the code. And their position was, no, we are protecting the tenant, meaning the moral elite, right? Our morals are higher than yours. And so even though it doesn't follow the law, we are saying that that's the new standard because it's morally correct according to our interpretation. And so in a real way, it took us probably 6 months to get that fought through, where then they agreed to say, okay, you don't have to demolish the building if an engineer certifies that, all this stuff is correct and right. And so we did that, went through all of that and got it all done and submitted it to them. We're in the final stages now of getting it now, quote, approved. Ridiculous, right? And at the end of the day, we'll have had 10 units, call it $1,500 a unit offline for a year. It's cost us $150,000. So I'm saying that because what we see is this also rise of these ideology of these bureaucrats, where they're seizing hold of a power that they got of unlimited power in the pandemic. And now they're implementing it in different areas. And this becomes problematic because, again, like when you're dealing with a fire restoration or you're dealing with a remodel, there's a typical standard where you have to be able to, as an investor, look at it and say, okay, we're going to buy this project. We're going to redesign this building. The blueprints on it, will take 6 weeks. We submit it to the city. It should take about 8 to 10 weeks with the city. We're finding now in many locations that it's taking 3, 4, 5, 6 months. In some areas in Georgia, it took almost 10 months to what should have been took 2 months with plan review and such like that. Same thing here in Florida, different location altogether. Good Lord, for a building remodel job, it's taken 8 months so far. So I say this because, again, what does it mean? It means that there's a new, when you're underwriting it, and we normally would look at a thing and we'd say, hey, we're going to be able to execute this in this timeline. we have to change that now. We have to account for that now in the underwriting. And this is something that people aren't really talking about. And also, the other thing that's not really being discussed when you look at this is there are some areas where, they, like we experienced there in Georgia, they're just not even following the own laws that they have on the books, right? And I mean, that's crazy that this is where we find ourselves as a country. And again, this is going to keep happening more and more, right? The reason being is there's no pushback. More and more of the areas where they start to think this way, they have people around them that celebrate them and say, oh yeah, that's right. You're looking out for the tenant or the resident, or you're looking out for the little guy. You're doing the right thing. Even though they're not following the law, and even though they're not elected, the elected officials go, oh yeah, no, it makes sense to me. And so it's really a tag team difficulty. You've got the populist politicians that are making an impact that's adverse to economics and investment. And now you've also got the rise of these ideological bureaucrats who are also doing the same. And so this is something that we're watching. And also we're really bringing that into our underwriting, and we're also bringing it in to our executions because of what we've experienced here. So again, you're going to see more and more of this on the rise, not only as we enter into this political season, as we've just seen this past week, but when you drill down into the nuts and bolts of on-the-ground management and investing, you're also going to see this. And this is critical to navigate away from it when you can, and navigate through it and anticipate the costs of it. Thank you so much. Have a blessed and victorious week and year, for this is the week God has ordained for you.